In this video, I'm going to show you every single soul core in the base game of Nioh 2. I mentioned I'd do this in an earlier video. Obviously, there will be spoilers. I'm also going to play each video for these and kind of explain a little bit about the core, but not very much. You can look at my guide for that. So we start with Gaki. It Choose On Guys. It's kind of useless, but hey, if you want to gain Anima, it's a decent way to get Anima Absorption. Enki is decent for horn breaks. It gives you a little jump. I don't like how much it locks you into its animation, especially coming out of it. But, you know, if you need a little dodge that goes outwards, it can be useful. Yoki is fantastic for humans. As you can see, it knocks them down. Does pretty good damage. Gozuki does a charge. It ends when you hit an enemy and does that upswing. It's fantastic for damage, although the attunement cost is a bit high. Mizuki does a big 270-degree swing, does a lot of damage. I don't like how much you're locked into the animation, but it's pretty unparalleled for just a single hit of damage. Ippon Dadara also does a big single hit of damage, will often break horns, and it's just a pretty strong ability. Consider using it. It's very useful to tie into your combos. Keep in mind that Soul Core yokai abilities will cancel some of your animations, so you can get out of those down frames. All of the Onibi, I suggest, especially use them on your secondary Guardian Spirit, because they will give you the weapon buff that is associated with their element, and that buff lasts as long as the Talisman. It also gains you Anima magic proficiency, at least in patch 1.05 it does, and I'm pretty sure that's still the case now. The Kappa Soul Core gives you some iframes, pretty useful, and also makes you, I think, about 30 seconds of immunity from attacks from behind. Very, very useful. If you use it while it's still active, I think it interrupts pretty much every attack, including grabs, in the entire game, but you have to be very close range, and it has to currently be active, so that's a bit of an edge use. Nurikabe does a 3-hit combo. Each pit only costs 2 Anima to use. It's one of the best Soul Cores in the game. I highly recommend it. Mujina doesn't give you any abilities, but it lets you copy enemy enhancements. Maybe that'll be more important in the DLC. And Inra is only useful if you're cheating. You can be hit while it doesn't do any good damage unless you're building barehanded, because it's bugged right now. Noriona, by the way, you'll get a paralyze on most enemies that aren't resistant to it, which is a lot of the human enemies and just regular enemies in the game. Consider using it, especially situationally. Aberrant Soldier does a big rocket fist. If you need a ranged option that isn't your gun, here you go. Toxic Slime, you spit on a guy. It's pretty good poison accumulation. If you don't want to slot those poison shuriken, here's a way to get poison on pretty much every enemy. Yatsunokami is the best ability in the entire game. It is currently bugged, so its damage does not scale after the first hit unless you stay completely still. But it animates for 3 seconds, and you can attack people while it's animating, and it staggers pretty much everybody. It's the best one in the game. Don't tell me that. Don't at me. Don't tell me Otagamaru is better. Yatsunokami is the best one in the game. Don't want to hear it. Yamamba, you slash and you dash at a guy. You can dash through some larger yokai. It's pretty situational. I'm not a huge fan. One on Oni is one of the worst ones in the game. Don't use this. Well, if you can find a use for it, sure, whatever. I guess it's technically cheap to use for how much damage you get out of it. Krasutinku is kind of awful. People have suggested it's a good upward dodge, but you have Enki for that. Maybe if you're fighting a bunch of human AI that you want to trick into running underneath you, but if you're fighting a bunch of humans and you have problems with them, you have bigger problems than what Soul Core did attach. Waira is fantastic. You go underground and you use as much Anima as you want to dodge things. Dodge entire sections of a boss attack. Who cares? It's great. Carcasso Umbrella is good at paralyzing larger yokai, but otherwise kind of awkward to use and not very useful. Use Noriona over this unless you really like Carcasso Umbrella. Skeleton Warrior summons some buddies to shoot at an enemy. Pretty good. If you need another ranged option, sure. Kamitachi is awkward to hit in the sweet spot, but does decent enough damage. It's just really hard to justify that attunement and costs. Kuroka is great for setting people on fire, and not much else. It does 8 fireballs whenever you're in Dark Realm, though. It's pretty good tracking. If you want to set people on fire or have yokai stealth, I suggest it. Otherwise, maybe put it on your secondary Guardian Spirit for that. Dweller hits guys 3 times. The damage is bugged, so you're probably never going to use it until they fix it. Rokurokubi is really good at hitting those really evasive enemies that like to jump around you. It's a good 360 hit for only 4 costs. It does have pretty significant downtime though, so be aware of that. It hits pretty strong though, despite all that. Onryoki is pretty strong actually. You can land multiple hits with it, and it's useful whenever you do. Don't see a lot of people using this, despite how good it is, I think. Mitsumi Yazura shoots elements depending on what your current Guardian Spirit is. I can't really recommend this one, but it's still pretty neat. Biwaboku doesn't really give you anything except for Soul Core drop rate and damage to Revenants. Is what it is. Sarimoke shoots out these cool black orbs that if they don't hit anything, they create puddles of Yokai Realm that you can actually key pulse and get back more than what the Anima cost is, if you're equipped correctly and have the right abilities. So potentially infinite Anima. But also it's a decent staggering ability and has pretty good tracking, and it is useful despite like the kind of long cast time. Flying Bolt is more useful for its passive abilities than the thing it does, but you can lower enemy movement speed, both on ranged movement hits, as well as on ranged weapon hits, as well as on hitting them with the pretty fantastic tracking on its use. Namahage does a lot of really quick stabs. I highly recommend it if you just want a pretty big damage ability that you can reliably use. Tesso farts on people. It's the one that you fart on people. Makes them stinky. Does lower their defense, does make it if they eat anything, they'll vomit. Not amazingly useful, but hey, if you want to fart on people and lower their defense, there you go. Ubume knocks people back. Some enemies will just attack through the entire thing and still hit you, like Yoki loves to do that. People tell me that it's pretty good for dealing key damage to, or maximum key damage to Yokai who are already out of key, because you'll just stagger them around with it. I've had mixed success with that. If you need to deal key damage to a boss, just use like Nurikabe and get actual damage while you're getting that key damage. Because 2 punches of Nurikabe is probably more useful than ever using Ubume. But hey, you know, if you find yourself swarmed a lot, could be useful. Anyudo is not great. Does decent damage. I would always suggest Namahage over this, to be honest. Yuki is really hard to land, but if you do, it does decent damage and poisons enemies. Willmonk is what Aninra wishes he could be if Aninra scaled normally and wasn't bugged. It staggers enemies, whereas Aninra doesn't, and it goes a little bit faster. Does less damage ticks, though, so, you know, that's probably why it costs and attunes for way less. Kasha is another good bugged one, as all the ones that animate while you can fight are. But, you know, it'll hit enemies for you. The faster movement on Amrita Absorption is pretty cool. So, you know, don't overlook it. Could be useful. I don't like how high it costs for what it does, but hey, you know, you can't win them all. Ryumen Sukuna is fantastic, especially for putting enemy confusion on enemies, which it gives you more anima on. I highly suggest using it. Dadara Boki has, you know, a cool laser spin, and it's kind of hard to land and kind of bad. Magatsu Warrior does a bunch of slashes. Really great against enemies with low defense. You can actually spend more anima to do even more slashes. You want to make sure both the physical swords and the laser swords that come out of them hit enemies, so you want to use this in melee, despite it being a ranged attack that can go through enemies. It's pretty good, though. Especially if you are, like, way over leveled or have way better gear than what you need for a stage. Yeah, I mean, just well on dudes. Lady Osakabe is good for a pretty big ranged attack. You can hit pretty much everyone on the screen with it. It does have a pretty significant cost. If you want to hit everybody on the screen in that same way, you're probably going to get better damage out of Mizuki, to be honest. Or, yeah, Mizuki, whatever the one is with the sword. Takemaru is kind of busted. It is bugged, so it does do less damage after a certain point because it stops scaling. But I find that it's not as useful on human enemies as people chalk it up to be, though it still will interrupt them at times. I just find that whenever you miss with a Takemaru, man, you really do miss. It's also got a huge cost, but that's negligible if you build for it. Scampus is often overlooked, especially for how low the attunement and cost are. I highly recommend it for anybody that's running a build where they're really locking themselves in a long animation. I think it's probably unparalleled for something like Mad Spinner. So if you're playing a Mad Spinner build, consider Scampus. The escort duration is great if you actually use Scampus spells, but also because you can pop into it, animation cancel out of anything, and move your character wherever you want, it's, yeah, I don't know. I guess if you're not using Feral, I suppose the counter argument is I could always Feral Burst to get that, you know, animation canceling movement to wherever I want. But hey, man, it's Campus. Maelstrom Onibi, like I covered, Onibi are great. This one like, gets you water, which is probably the best buff in the game. Hey, look, there's Thunder, gets you Thunder. Electric is a pretty good buff, or I guess debuff to throw on enemies. Kodama throws a little thing at an enemy, they drop an elixir. Isn't that cute? If you're in the Dark Realm, it shoots them with lightning. It's not bad. I think the lightning is pretty good for the cost and attunement, but how often are you in Dark Realm, right? Every boss fight. Umebozu spits water on people. If you wanted to make people get wet, well, you got Kasha. That's a joke. You have Umebozu. Shooting Doji does a big laser that doesn't scale at all because it's magic damage. If you want to catch people on fire, that's cool. Gives you increased defense when you absorb Amrita, so it could be useful for an Amrita absorption build because it'll make you tanky. But you know, yeah, if you want to get a big sweeping fire laser, that's cool. And hey, that's all the soul cores. The only ones that aren't here are the mortal soul cores, which will drop off of any human boss or mini boss, humanoid ones. So the way that those work is if you fuse any, they come in all three variants. So you might notice some of these aren't the typing that they normally have. Some of these are feral, brute, are phantom whenever they normally aren't, and that's because I fused them with a mortal soul core that was the opposite type. And anytime that you use a soul core with a different type, you can choose which type you want the final soul core to come out with. Mortal soul core don't have any abilities, they only exist to kind of fuse with other soul cores to up their rank. So yeah, this is the full suite of all rank, well, I say that, which one of those snuck in? There's one of those that Mujina. I must have gotten rid of my actual other Mujina without fusing. Now I feel like a chump. Anyway, this is a full suite of all of the soul cores minus Mujina at soul core rank 9, and most of them at 160, which is what you're going to relevantly see. People have told me you can get soul cores at level 170. I haven't personally had it happen, but I haven't done a lot of level scaled mission grinding for soul cores yet, so maybe it's a possibility. But that's the soul cores. That's a quick overview. Check my guide if you're interested in actually using soul cores. I highly recommend using soul cores. They're a core mechanic of the game. They're very, very important to the game, and they will take your fighting to the next level. Have fun out there.